I am Eduardo González Castillo, co-director of the Center for Research on Educational and Community Services of the University of Ottawa. Through this center, which is directed by Professor Peter Miley, we collaborate with community partners, co-create and mobilize knowledge to improve policies, programs, services, and practices. Our work emphasizes social inclusion and focuses on applied research, evaluation, and training. Je suis Eduardo González Castillo, co-directeur du Centre de recherche sur les services éducatifs et communautaires de l'Université d'Ottawa. Dans ce centre, qui est dirigé par le professeur Peter Miley, nous collaborons avec des partenaires communautaires pour co-créer et mobiliser les connaissances afin d'améliorer les politiques, les programmes et les services. Notre travail met l'accent sur l'inclusion sociale et se concentre sur la recherche appliquée, l'évaluation et la formation. La conférence d'aujourd'hui se déroulera en anglais. Today's conference will be held in English. The title of today's conference is How Ageism Shapes the Digital Divide Among Older Persons in Qatar, Insights for the Diverse Aging of a Population in Canada. Dr. Ajar Shagumi is a CRECS affiliate researcher. She's also the Senior Learning Manager at the Canadian Centre for Diversity and Inclusion, consulting and the founder and director of ARMA Sense. Dr. Dina Al-Thani is an associate professor and director of interdisciplinary programs at Ahmad bin Khalifa University. Dr. Susan Ahmad is a research consultant, evaluator, and adjunct faculty in sociology of Northwestern University and Georgetown University in Qatar. Dr. Ashraf Othman is the head of the ICT Accessibility Innovation and Research and at the MADA Center in Qatar. So without further ado, I'll turn the floor over to our speakers.
Thank you very much for the very kind invitation to come today and present the outcome of our research, as well as for your very kind introduction. Thank you. And I will start the presentation by going through a bit of basically background of how this research came together. So this is an outcome of a proposal that was put in together just as the onset of the beginning of the COVID pandemic. And we realized that people, basically older person, are at risk, not only from a health perspective, as well as from the educational technology perspective. So we are here today to present one of our main findings, that ageism shaped their use of technology and their perception of technology. And we will also discuss the insight from the diverse aging population here in Canada. So the agenda for today, we will start by discussing the project behind this presentation and the source of the results we are presenting. We will then talk about the focus of this presentation, which is the results that are relevant to ageism and the empirical study results. We will discuss our key finding and how ageism shaped people's experiences with technology. This will be followed by my good friend, Dr. Hajar, and explaining how this correlates to the insights in the Canadian context and the key takeaways from this exercise. So the project behind this, as I explained, it all started at the onset of the pandemic, where we realized that there is a group who are left behind, and as we all say, as the mantra of the United Nations, we should not leave anyone behind. So that was the idea of why don't we investigate the root causes of digital divide and basically the reasons why this digital divide occur in basically in the realm of inclusion of the Qatari and Arab families living in Qatar. The project is funded by the Qatar National Research Fund and the Doha International Family Institute. It is a collaboration between 4 institutes, as you could see in the bottom of this slide, Hamad bin Khalifa University, where I come from, Mada Assistive Technology, where Dr. Ashraf, who is a principal investigator in this project, come from, and he leads the ICT accessibility as he's been presented, Ihsan Center and Age Well, where Dr. Hajar basically served as an expert there, as well as a researcher at that time. So next slide. Here I will discuss why this project is important and why the results of this project is important to the Arab world. So in the state of Qatar, when we look at the population is basically or distributed toward Arab living in Qatar and people who live for long term, I mean from 12 years to higher, from Qatari and Arab family, people come with Arab origin who lives in the state of Qatar. So we looked at it from this perspective, and we know from statistics in the United Nations that reported that there is an increase of the older population in the Arab world. We might see as this is a small population nowadays, not over 5 to 6% in the Arabian Gulf countries that constitute of Qatar, Saudi, UAE, Oman and Bahrain, but this is changing, and it's also not only changing the trend is not only changing in the region of the Arabian Gulf. In fact, is changing as well in countries, in Arab countries residing in North Africa and in Asia. So we could see here in the graph in front of us the projections of the population of older adults in the region is changing dramatically due to many reasons, including economy, improvement in healthcare, and other policies related to independent living. From our study, we realized that the pandemic played also a positive role in accelerating the efforts. So the finding shows the importance of the existing effort and how these efforts were accelerated due to the pandemic. So many aspects that have been or tasks that have been fulfilled physically, now it's fulfilled online, and hence that affected their acceptance of technology. Next slide, please. So why is this project relevant to the state of Qatar? The state of Qatar in the past decade has done a lot of effort in terms of having older person and other groups, including disability and other groups, to live with dignity, to live to take care of their well-being, including their digital well-being. So this is one of the basically this is one of the outcomes we see nowadays of the effort that has been done by the state of Qatar for the past decade or two. So for example, here in front of us, the Qatar National Health Strategy advised a special plan for healthy aging that actually integrate tools and programs to support independent living, integrated home cares, and continuous rehabilitation and healthcare services. Mada Center, which is a center that's specialized for technologies or assistive technologies, has been established in 2009 and has been carrying on amazing work into different groups from disabilities to elderly and other groups in terms of inclusion in the realm of technology. Mada had advised a best practice document for assistive technology of the use of older person in 2017 and has been carrying out multiple efforts in different domains, from innovation to strategy and policy to training. And here we could see a photo and in the left-hand side where basically a member of Mada conducting an accessibility training recently, actually, with a center that I would like to talk about, a center that supported this project. It's called Ihsan, which is the Center of Empowerment and for the elderly care. So Ihsan have been, the mission of Ihsan is to enhance the well-being of the elderly from the different perspectives of life, including the use of technology. Ihsan and Mada have collaborated in conducting a number of training, of ICT-related training for the past 7 years, and it is continuous. So our study highlighted actually in one of our publications the role of this partnership and the importance of these partnerships in enhancing the well-being of people, of older people, raising awareness and supporting technology use and training. So coming to the main goal of our research at that time, the main questions were to understand the opportunities and identify the opportunities that support the daily activities and participation and social inclusion of the caregivers and the older person. So we are not looking only at the older person. In fact, we are looking beyond. We're looking at the context and including the caregivers. We would like to understand the challenges and the enablers in the context of the Arab world, given the differences that the Arab world or the uniqueness of the setting in the Arab world in terms of the family setting and the issues or the factors affecting the family setting. The method includes basically, we followed a participatory sort of method. As you could see in the center of the screen, you see policymakers, community partners, and the other circle, you see a researcher and the older person and their caregivers. So the approach started as any research by investigating and reviewing the state of the art, especially technology, accessibility technology research in the Arab world, understanding what has been done, and actually very little has been done, and we published the work as in fact. Following that, we conducted semi-structured interviews, and there where I will be presenting the result of that study. Following that study, we conducted a number of what we called stakeholder dialogues with policymakers, community, and partner to understand their roles and also to communicate our research. Given this approach, we were able to produce knowledge as well as to contribute directly to policy making and recommendations. Our result has been reported in workshops with policymakers as well as in publications, as we could see here in the list in front of us. We have two paper publications, one conference, one journal, and another one is on the way as well as posters in different key conferences in Qatar and in Canada. So back to the focus of this presentation. In this presentation, we will be discussing the result of the empirical study, and we will reflect upon the result on the Canadian context. Based on the lesson learned from our project, we will report the barriers and the dynamic of technology in Qatar. We will showcase how ageism have been standing out when we look at the interviews, and it shapes the perception as well as in their use. We will also present basically how this could reflect to ethnic minorities among aging population here in Canada. So the method that we of our empirical research included conducting interviews with caregivers and older person living in the state of Qatar. We divided them into 4 groups. So that would consist of older person with the Qatari nationality, older person that comes from an Arab background and do not have a Qatari nationality, caregivers with a Qatari nationality, and caregivers with Arab nationalities living in the state of Qatar for at least 12 years. We tried to maximize the variation of the sample, given it's a qualitative research. We conducted semi-structured interviews over the phone because the study happened actually in the midst of the pandemic, and meeting people was quite hard in person, given that we were collaborating with the local NGO, Ihsan, to support the interviews. Of course, this all happened after obtaining an ethical approval, and we conducted a hybrid thematic analysis using thematic analysis tools and techniques. So here are some of our key findings. Basically talking about the demographics, as I said, we divided them into 4 groups, 20 of each main group, let's say. We've noticed that less than 50% of our older person population have a secondary degree, school degree or less. Again, between 55 and 60 of our population comes between the age of 60 and 69. 11 were female. It was easier to reach female than male, I think due to cultural aspects as well. Most of them, 90% of them, living with their family or extended family. And by extended family, I mean grandchildren. That's a common setting in the Arab world where big families still stay within the same residence. Caregivers, we interviewed 20. Most of them come with secondary educational level or less. 14 were below the age of 50. Most of them, as we expected, were females, and there are many studies that discusses the role of female in caregiving. And 9 out of 20 spent 6 hours or more daily caregiving hours. Next, please. So here are some of the interesting findings. Most of our elderly people use smartphone. You could see here 18 out of 20. They've been the second popular is TV, and that was again expected. Maybe it would be the other way around if the study was conducted 10 years ago, while now mobile phones are more relevant to use, and there are many tasks that people would need a smartphone to conduct, including governmental services here in Qatar. GPS also were popular, as well as tablet. Then we were also investigating the most accessible or the most used, let's say, softwares. The most used software, it was WhatsApp, and that's why I was saying the most accessible. And I think many, I come from the field of web accessibility and mobile accessibility, and we've seen in many studies that WhatsApp is an example of an accessible, inclusive software where the user could text a message, could videotape a message, or send an audio a message, and the buttons and the usage of the different interaction in this software in particular is quite accessible for different groups. So, and that showed in our result as well. E-services were also quite popular in the male population that we interviewed. And the main reason is that e-services here in Qatar are usually, this is the first way to get any services within the government in Qatar, and therefore I believe that this was quite popular. Plus, as we said, the study happened during the pandemic, and actually during the pandemic, many services shifted online. Many governmental services, including health provider services, shifted online. Social media also has been noted, search engines, and the use of on the religious use, and there are nowadays so many tools to help people in the Middle East with an Islamic religion background to access religious content, including the Quran, in mobile applications and websites and so this is one thing we also noticed in the usage of technology. Next, please. Here we come to the factors affecting their use and access to technology. The first factor that they have discussed or highlighted in many of the interviews we've conducted is the privacy concerns. And that also came not only from the older person, but from the caregiver. For example, in one of the interviews, the caregiver discussed that the older person might start recording a conversation in WhatsApp to someone else, while the caregiver or other family member is also speaking at the same time, and that dialogue might be confidential or private. So they are worried of such sensitivity in terms of privacy, also how they would protect the privacy of the older person, and other aspects related to the privacy concern from this, for example, the culture here in the Middle East or in Qatar in particular. Years ago, women were really separated from male, so female were, so many had this mindset. So for example, one of the elderly female participants discussed receiving a call from a stranger who is a male. He might be a bank clerk or customer service, but the fact that it is not the usual context for her. So privacy concern were discussed in depth. Literacy. Some of our participants, especially female, had low literacy, and people in the age of late 60s, those people basically were in the school age in the 60s or the early 70s. At that stage, here in the state of Qatar, education for women was not as we have it today. So many have lost the opportunity to join school at that age, and there we've seen it in our sample, in the study. Accessibility is not sufficient, as we could see here in the there is a lot to be done in terms of usability, making technology more easy to use, more joyful to use. So even if sending a text message is quite simple for one group, it might not be that simple, and that's what we've seen it with our discussion with the elderly. Many have discussed or highlighted that certain tasks like sending a text message, it would be they would wait for their caregiver to come home for them to help them to send a text message to a friend. So you could see here that accessibility is important, yet it is not sufficient. We need to think about usability and user experience and other factors. Religious beliefs. So basically, I think this affected our population and how they use technology, how they access technology. It's whether it will encourage them to use technology, so they have religious app and content, while it might be the other way around, thinking that technology conflicts with their beliefs. Next. Yeah. So other factor that was influential in our interviews is ageism, and how this affected the perception and use. So for example, they would not say, they would say that technology is not for me, it's not for my age. So this thought of being not within the circle that use technology. I will leave the floor to my colleague, Dr. Hajar, to stress on the fact of ageism and to continue the discussion.
Thank you, Dina. So in this section, I'll focus on ageism as a cultural concept and how it shapes technology access and use by older person. I will also bring some insights that we discussed in team about how our findings are relevant and may be transferred or may be interesting for concerned stakeholders in Canada. So when we define aging, before talking about ageism, let's talk about aging. So when we talk about aging, where ageism is rooted, aging is a biological process, but at the same time, it is also a sociocultural concept. As a biological process, the human life cycle has been divided in different stages, starting from childhood, adulthood, and different other ages. Aging research shows that physical and sensory changes are typically associated with old age, are really the result of a gradual decline that typically begins between the ages of 40 to 55 years old. That is earlier than the age that most people consider themselves old. In that case, I should be very old. However, the societal context has impacted how we define aging through the advancement of the retirement ages, for example. Currently in Qatar, and that was a bit of surprise for me, like Dina informed me, like there is a big chunk of people who retire at the age of 50, 60. In Canada and some Western countries, we are moving to what we call the fourth age. What does that mean? That means you are considered old only when you start being frail and lose your autonomy. As long as you are working, active, healthy, you're not old. So even though we cannot ignore the biological process, it will start anyway at the age of 40, 50. This conceptualization of age explains the cultural part of it. When I joined this project, I joined it as what I would call myself a familiar outsider. I came with a Canadian research experience with a rusty Arabic, and I hope I'm open-minded. And I joined a great team, and I learned a lot about this culture and how the definition of aging may be different than the one that I knew here or I learned here in Canada. So the project we conducted in Qatar gave us more evidence on the importance of the socio-cultural context in defining aging and technology by older person. For instance, Qatar is a conservative collectivist culture. Some studies have suggested that cultural groups with a more collectivist rather than individualist approach seem to be less ageist, and that they tend to integrate others in the social space and value their role within an extended family, as Dina explained. Older persons in Qatar have what we call a special status due to the religious beliefs, where the family members are required to take care of them and treat them with respect. This explains why the majority of most of our participants were living in extended family settings. That allows them more human connection, more exposure and support, and access to use the technology through their grandchildren, children living in the same household. From another side, in the Qatari culture, there is still a social taboo in relation to age-related diseases such as Alzheimer, and family members experience a certain pressure and shame for not fulfilling social expectation as caregiver. So I learned that autonomy, not like here in Canada, maybe is not the most sought benefit of technology. It's more about the quality of life. It's more about respect and dignity. And also in this context, there is still a stigma around older adults using assistive technology in public. So just imagine the idea, how much here in Canada we are promoting and moving towards the use of social robots within older adults or for older adults. Well, in Qatar, it may be a different perspective. It's like I'm asking a caregiver, okay, would you buy this product for your dad, for example? The answer may be different than it could be here, because simply it just show in another way saying to that person, you are not taking care of your dad and you are just bringing him a social robot to do your job. So you are a bad caregiver. And this is against the cultural, religious values and the societal values that are in place. So all these were great learning of how the context, the culture, and the society, the values within the society shape the definition of aging and the access and use of technology. So, ageism, what's that? I believe now we are well situated to talk about this big buzzword. It's not. Well, ageism stems from cultural beliefs around aging. But what ageism is a term that refers simply to age-based discrimination. It is a process of age-based stereotypes and discrimination targeting mostly older adults. Ageism could target younger people. These stereotypes, attitudes, and discrimination can be. Okay. So ageism includes three dimensions: stereotypes, attitudes, discrimination, which may give a reaction, and it goes inside a cycle. These stereotypes, attitudes, and discrimination can be positive or negative. So let's see how the example that is on the screen, how this works. So older adults, for example, are usually portrayed as incapable, technophobic, or unwilling to use technology. These social and institutional bias toward aging are behind the development of attitudes such as they cannot learn how to use new technologies. And this will lead to older adults being ignored as end user of technologies, and technology being developed with caregivers in mind, with the buyers in mind. And automatically, this will lead to more older people feeling themselves less exposed to technology, being exposed to technology, not answering their needs. So their self-esteem or their self-efficacy when using technology will decrease, which will automatically get the stereotype of older adults as technophobic reinforced, and the digital generational gap is widened. As you can see here from what we are seeing from this example, ageism has the power of acting as a self-fulfilling prophecy by deepening the original stereotypes and embedding older adults' engagement in technology use. Do we have such thing in Canada? Well, we do. And you have to read the extensive work of Dr. Martine Lagacé around this. In fact, ageism is everywhere. Just during so many years working, 6 years working in age tech within the Age1 network, I got that belief we were so much focused on accessibility, and this hidden elephant in the room was just we ignored it. We were not giving it its right place. Ageism is everywhere, from our institution and relationship to ourselves. Most people become aware of it only when they get old, or when they start having those jokes at work about being old, you are a dinosaur, you don't know how to use this technology, things like this. But unlike racism and sexism and other forms of discrimination, whose victims are clearly identified, they are proper to particular subpopulation, everyone who will have the opportunity to live longer will be vulnerable to ageism. That's one of the reasons why we should care about dealing with ageism in our society. The pervasiveness of ageism, for example, has been highlighted during the coronavirus pandemic, where older adults were considered to be the most sick, the most vulnerable. Ageism is so much part of our culture in Canada that most people are not even aware of it. That's a fact. Ageism is present in the way we think, feel, act towards older adults, towards ourselves according to age. So in conclusion, different cultures have different attitudes toward age and aging, but none is free of age bias. And beyond deepening the digital generational gap, that it is the focus of this presentation, ageism has far-reaching impact on all aspects of our health and well-being when we are older. It was associated, this is evidence, research evidence, updated ones. It was associated with early death. It was associated with risky health behavior. It was associated with lower quality of life and with an increase of isolation and loneliness. But also it was included with a huge societal and economic cost. So let's come back to ageism and technology. So ageism, it does not impact technology adoption. It also impacts technology research and development. Technologies could have a lot of potential in improving the quality of life of older persons in Qatar, Canada, and across the globe. Our project brought evidence on how it is important to fight ageism as part of any solution to bridge the digital gap lived by older persons. However, we need to highlight that ageism goes beyond the access and use of technology, as it impacts also the research and technology development. What you are seeing in the screen are citations from existing research, and they are not that old, where you will see how ageism is present in this research. I'll let you read them, but I'll get you the summary of it. So for instance, when targeting older adults, researchers often tend to think of their needs as disability-related needs that are framed in boxes such as vision, hearing, or physical or cognitive. The reality is that when we age, it's likely that all of these abilities will decline to a lesser or greater extent, mainly in the fourth age, the frailty age. Aging is often presented in research as a disability and not thought as a process that brings with it a change in ability. Also, many studies still describe the process of aging older person and their technical ability using potential stereotypical categorization and generalization. And you can see through the examples, mainly the highlighted text in green, what I'm talking about. Other manifestation of ageism in age tech research includes the use of outdated terminology to describe older adults, such as elderly, senile, and fragile. I also identified the selection criteria used to engage older adults in research. Like many research, they tend to exclude participants who are not physically active or healthy enough or not tech savvy. Last and not least, older persons are not systematically included in research about them. And even when they are included, they tend to be excluded from specific phases in which feedback is thought, their feedback is thought to be unnecessary, such as prototyping. What we learned from our project is not only how important ageism is in shaping the digital divide within older person, but also the importance of the cultural context in defining the effect of ageism. Ageism interacts and exacerbates other forms of disadvantage, such as racism, sexism, and ableism. It's not new. I believe all of you know how diverse is Canada. The last census identified over 500 ethnic groups in Canada. And ethnocultural minority seniors in Canada is the fastest growing segment of this population, of the older people, of the aging population. However, what's happening currently in age tech is that older people are often thought as a homogeneous group. So you will see in research, research question how do older people think? What are the challenges that older people face? And older people are often defined by their age and clustered to describe or presume their experience or opinion. Of course, older people are very diverse, mainly here in Canada. They have different life experience, different cultural background, aspiration, and circumstances. And this diversity express also a variety of needs, concerns, and experience that need to be recognized. We are limited in time in this presentation, so we won't go in much discussion, but this project allowed me to reflect on my Canadian experience and learning, and what I learned through my postdoctoral fellow with the Age One Network and Dr. Virginie Copigot here at the University of Ottawa. It mainly allowed me to open my mind on the importance of aging as a sociocultural concept that shapes age tech, industry, research, and adoption, and in deepening the digital divide within older adults. Here are some of the key takeaways and suggestions to go forward. Okay, so our team believed that one of the first steps to reduce ageism is to increase awareness about it. that would help in shifting, that would be the start to shift our definition of aging as a process that brings changes in abilities rather than a disability. So why we don't, it's like dealing, if you see all the technology that target kids, are we considering kids as disabled because they cannot use certain types of technology, when the older population need to be thought as a segment of end users on itself with different abilities, with a set of characteristics and features that goes with a normal aging process. Yes, of course, so some of them would have disability, but it intersects with their aging. While acknowledging, and this I need to highlight it, accessibility and usability are major factors to consider in any technology-based solution targeting older person, we absolutely need to fight ageism and bring it at the front of all effort to promote technology development, implementation, adoption at the same level of access and accessibility. And by the way, when I talk about accessibility, I'm talking about cognitive accessibility, physical accessibility, and sensory accessibility. Yes, and of course, we suppose that they have already access. So the availability and access, physical access, is kind the basic of it. We cannot talk about these unless they have access to the technology. And finally, we need also to better engage our others in our research and technology development and stop treating their social characteristics separately. Mainly their age, gender, ethnicity, and socioeconomic position, as this does not match the reality that people may simultaneously embody multiple characteristics. In Canada, we have a beautiful network doing a great job in promoting inclusive approaches to older adults engaging with technology. And I was at the last AgeWell conference, and I was thrilled to know that cultural competency is added as part of AgeWell training program. So yeah, that's all for me. Ready for your questions.